of yesterday's session. I'm hoping all of you were there in yesterday's session. And as I said, if you have any question, you can just post them in the chat. I'll be sure to check them out. Yeah. So today's session will just continue with what was discussed yesterday about creating a high fidelity prototypes in Figma. I'll be walking you through now after you've created your design, what next, and probably just a brief introduction of myself. I am currently an academic cloud advocate for artificial intelligence and machine learning at Microsoft. So if you're interested in artificial intelligence or anything machine learning, just hit me up. And then I'm also a freelance designer, but currently on break as I just transitioned to this role. So I'm just getting used to it first before I go back to design. And then if you want to find me anywhere on the internet, you can find me using my username at Bethany Jap. So whether it's LinkedIn, Twitter, and so on, you can find me at Bethany Jap or Bethany Jap Chumba. Okay, let's go into finding out if you were attentive in yesterday's session. So my first question is, what was covered in the last session? Anyone who has any idea what was covered? You can either raise your hand and tell me what you learned yesterday, or you can just type in the chat. So I'll give you like a second to think about it. What did you learn yesterday? What was your key takeaway? Was there no one here who was there for yesterday's session? Okay, let me see in the chat. So creating a design systems and seeing how practically how they work together. Interesting. So thank you, Ephraim and Evans. So for today's session, we'll be covering a bit more on design system. I already know you've covered in depth, so I'll just do a recap of what design systems are, and then we'll dive into feedback. So how do you give feedback in design? And the last part will do a bit on now you've done your design. So what next? How do you give your design to either recruiter or to different engineering teams to now go and run with it? So a brief probably into like design systems. I know you covered this yesterday, so I'm just doing a recap. Design system is just a collection of everything you're doing in you use when you're creating your design. So it can be guidelines on how to use your design. It can be like the colors, which style guides are you using. It can be code snippets to help engineers implement the designs, or even pictures and digital assets that you're using. Most of the time, it's hosted in a website. So depending on now your company and then the IP rights and everything, it can be either hosted publicly or internally. Some of the components of a design system include now the visual design elements. Visuals is normally the colors, typography, iconography, and everything you see that makes up a design. And then we have UI patterns. UI patterns are now a collection of the things. So for example, a button contains a bit of colors, a bit of typography, and something like form also contains the same thing and might also include a bit of iconography. And lastly, it contains the guidelines. So like, how are you supposed to use this design? Who's updating this and so on. And the last bit, which is mainly done in case you have like front-end design engineers in your team, or you have a bit of knowledge on front-end, is the code. So in case you have like code snippets of how you can implement these things, or you have like a naming system for your design elements and stuff. Yeah. And then this is one design system that I like, Latitude. So we won't go into exploring it because I know you did yesterday, but I'll share with you guys a link to like explore the different design systems online. And then, yeah, that's it about a recap of yesterday. So if you weren't here in yesterday's session, I think I've got you sorted. So today we're talking about feedback. Feedback is someone coming and telling you your design looks like A, B, and C, or something of that sort. And the main point I normally like when I'm talking about feedback is telling everyone that when someone gives you feedback in design, the feedback is on your work, not to you as a person, not telling you probably you should have had your hand facing I don't know which side. The feedback mostly resonates around your work. So I don't know. Maybe I can ask, have there been like a time whereby you gave someone your design and they told you something like, make it pop, or something like, I those colors hazinifurahishi. They don't make me happy. So such feedback, have you ever gotten such feedback? I don't know. You can just say yes or raise your hand if you have. So such feedback is technically not useful because make it pop. What does that mean? What am I supposed to make pop? How am I supposed to make the design pop? And then something like your design does not make me happy. Okay. I do not know how to make you happy. So what will make you happy in my design? Something like that, something of that sort. So some feedback you might receive, it might be pretty useless. But then, so today, at least by the end of today's session, you should have like a framework on how feedback is given. How can you give feedback that's meaningful, useful, and someone can actually go and implement the changes. So in feedback, there are both ways. You can be either a recipient of feedback or you can be the one giving feedback. So how do you make sure when you're giving feedback, the feedback is good, useful, and they can actually implement it? Or how do you ensure that, okay, this feedback you're receiving actually made sense to you? So I have a video to summarize all this. I watched this video last year and I loved it a lot. So I don't know how to explain better than them. So I'll just go ahead and share the video. It's by a channel called Feature. So if you know Chris Do or you've seen someone called Chris Do on the internet, this is the guy. So, oh, I did not share my sound. Oh, sorry, I have to. Uh, Give me a second. So let me share my sound. Include. Ooh. Okay, so everything decided. Huh. Okay, give me a second as I figure out how sound is being shared here. Escape. Let me just refresh this. Huh. Give me a second. I'm so sorry. I am supposed to be sharing sound and okay, sound makes sense there. Sound is okay there. Okay. And then let me share again. Teams. Include computer audio. Okay. I'm sorry for this. Device settings. Speaker. Let me see if it will work. Again, not shared audio. I don't know. It's basically refusing me to hear audio. Let me do one last shift. I see if it will work. Finally, it's worked. So I'll mute my mic for this as I play.
If you can learn to ask good questions, to give good direction, and then leave space for others so that they can practice and flex their creative problem-solving muscles, guess what? You're multiplying your team, you're multiplying your efforts, and you're removing the friction that normally happens in communication and relationships between clients and your team. Essentially, when I'm working with my team and I review the work, if I need to give feedback and there's something on the page or the things that I'm looking at that doesn't quite feel right, I identify that first. It's like, you know what, Ben, for some reason, when I look at this, I'm feeling a little bit confused. So first I express how I feel. Like, why am I feeling the way that I'm feeling? I'm feeling confused because the hierarchy of the information doesn't line up. First I read this thing, and then this thing, but I feel like the stack should be 1, 2, and 3. And then so now I'm identifying what specifically is making me feel that way. The next part is now asking Ben, the designer, what they thought about that. What are ways that we could fix that? So before I make the recommendation of what I would do, I would like to open it up to challenge their thinking. So Ben, what would you do to fix the hierarchy here? Do you see that? And then they might make suggestions. Oh, it might be a contrast thing. Maybe this needs to be bigger. Then we would make these smaller. Maybe we have to change weights on the typeface. Maybe we have to recompose this so that it's reading left to right, up to down. So I'll leave it to them because I don't want to rob them of their creativity. I don't want to rob them of their problem-solving abilities. All I want to do is probe them so that they could look at their own work from a different angle. And the more angles that they could look at it, the more creative outputs they're going to give me on the other side. So all I'm doing there is trying to facilitate better ideas. And if at that point, if they've hit a wall in our discussion, then I might make a recommendation, say, you know what, I think we should actually change this typeface red and make it 300% bigger, make it huge. What do you think about that, Ben? So I make a recommendation, and then again, I leave room for discussion and negotiation because it could be completely subjective. And that person as the designer can challenge me. And I leave the space for that. I always leave space. And I try not to talk back to back where there's no room for somebody to interject. I ask a question and then I stay silent. Because for some people, it takes those extra 5 seconds for them to complete their thought before they feel confident for it to come out of their mouth. So if you're one of these people who have a hard time of just like, you can't stop talking because you like to fill the dead air and it's just a nervous habit maybe, or just how you're used to speaking, practice this. Every time you say something or ask a question, stop and be silent for 3 seconds. Then try and be quiet for 5 seconds. And then even longer. You just keep adding to that and get more and more comfortable with silence, because some people are very uncomfortable with that. But you'll realize if you leave the space for somebody else, they feel like they can jump in, especially if you're an intimidating person. Or if that person, let's say you're working with a client, they don't want to sound dumb, so they're not going to say something out of turn. If you give them the space, guess what? You're giving them the time to process. You could even say that, it's like, I know I just asked you something pretty challenging and I can see you thinking, and that's okay. You can take some time to process that. If we can't figure it out now, that's okay. We can come back later, maybe in an hour, we can discuss again. How does that sound? The whole point here is that You can't be the only creative genius in the room because guess what? You don't scale. You can't grow beyond yourself and you are limited to the hours and the days and your abilities. But if you can learn to ask good questions, to give good direction, and then leave space for others so that they can practice and flex their creative problem solving muscles, guess what? You're multiplying your team, you're multiplying your efforts, and you're removing the friction that normally happens in communication and relationships between clients and your team. So I will recap that. When I give feedback, I say, what am I feeling and why? What specifically is making me feel that way? And then we would discuss openly about ways to solve that relative to the brief and the goals. Then I make a recommendation on how we should move forward, and we negotiate and make sure that we're all good on the next actions that we're going to take. I hope you enjoyed.
Okay, I hope you have an idea now what entails giving feedback, and probably I can just summarize what he has said. He said when you're giving feedback, number one, find out what exactly, how the design makes you feel. For example, if you're saying that the design makes you feel unhappy, the next thing is to figure out why does the design make you feel that. And then lastly, you now discuss, okay, this is because I feel like that because A, B, C, and D. So once you get a grip of like learning how to give feedback this way, you can also go ahead and now when someone is giving feedback, you can go ahead and ask meaningful questions. So if someone is telling you, huh, your design makes me feel unhappy, hainifurahishi. So you ask that person, why doesn't it make you feel happy? What could I do differently that will make you happy? Is it change the color scheme? Is it enhance probably the fonts and everything? So that's a bit on giving feedback. That's an insight on that. And then the next bit is about design critic sessions. So most of the time when you're working with other people in a company, you realize you might get a lot of feedback on your design from different people. So one of the ways you get feedback is through a feedback session. So they call it design critic session. And this is a session I once was in. So we were doing an application for the marketing side, and the application touched the marketing, but I was reporting directly to the CEO. That meant whenever the CEO will want to give feedback, he will call the marketing team, we'll sit down, and I'll walk them through like the application, what I'm doing at each and every stage. So if it's the low fidelity prototypes, if it's the high fidelity, you sit down with them, give them an idea of what exactly you're building step by step. And then the CEO is there to ask questions, there to nudge me, okay, so can you go ahead and do this, or what will this button do? And then the marketing team will be there to now give the input. So probably, since this is a product, they'll be telling you like, that doesn't work. There's some research you've done that does not align with that. And then you realize when you're working with these two different people, everyone has their own interests. So the CEO is business minded. The marketing team, since it's the product, is there for the user. So the marketing team is defending the user, the CEO is defending the business. So it's up to you when you're presenting, you have to hear from both sides so that you actually get an idea of what exactly is happening. You actually get an idea of, okay, this is supposed to be done, this is not supposed to be done. Okay, then I think I'm coming to the end of it. So this is the last part of my presentation. My presentation today is very short, and this part is about design handoff. So there are two different ways that you hand off your designs. The first one is to engineers. So engineers are the people who will now build up your design from the ground up, right? And then the other group is those are the engineers. The other group is now the recruiters and hiring managers. So probably you just did this design like the way you're doing at this bootcamp. It's a design you're doing for the sake of building your reputation in the design industry, showing people that, I can actually do something with design. There's this thing that people normally ask. So most of the time you realize you do not have any experience. And when you go to an interview, they'll probably ask you, okay, can you show us some of the work you've done before? But you have zero experience. So it's like, I want to work. And then the recruiter is asking, okay, have you worked before? And then you're like, no, I want to work to gain the experience, but you don't have any experience. So doing design for the sake of your portfolio is very important to show your recruiter that, yes, I do not have any previous work experience, but I can design. I have worked in different design sessions, and yes, I can design whatever you want me to design. So there are two, in these two categories, the handoff is different. For engineers, it depends on how you work with your team. So let me give you two different cases. The first one is you work in a small team. That is like two engineers, a PM, and yourself as the designer. A very small team. That means every day you have to attend stand-ups. You have to go to different calls every day, showcasing what you've been able to do, sharing, okay, this is what I've been able to do, this is what I want to do in future, and so on. So that's number one. That's one way to work with engineers as you're designing. And then once you're done with the design process, as the engineers are there too, since you're like working alongside engineers, you might use products like Zeppelin or just use Figma directly and share with them the Figma file. And from yesterday's session, you told me you covered a bit on design system. When you're building alongside, like working together with engineers at the same time, you have to you build your design system from the word go. No, that's actually a very good practice, just building your design system from the word go. Therefore, when you're handing off, like when the engineers start working on the front end part of the designs, you already have the design system ready. It's just adding few things in future, but you have the base of the design system ready, and what's remaining is just adding the new products that you'll need. For example, I'm not sure if you can be able to see my Figma screen. If you cannot, just type in the chat. Ooh. Wow, I can't see my Figma screen at all. You can see it?
We can see. Yeah.
Okay, so let me go back home and I share with you an example. So this is a design I worked on with engineers alongside, like working together with the engineers. And as I mentioned, one of the things is having the design system already present. So it's taking a while to load. As it loads, the other thing is being able to demonstrate now the user flow. So as you design, since you're working together with engineers, the main thing is being able to showcase also the user flow. Not just showing like, okay, this is the final design, but also showcasing the user flow. So the prototype will look something like this in the finished, but yeah, it's something that you should be able to do. So having the style guide, as you can see, they can be able to see, okay, these are the illustrations that you might need to work on. And then since it's a desktop application and a mobile view, So normally this is like a Figma style. I wouldn't call this a design system per se. I'll just call it a style guide. And you can see the different icons I've used here, how they're related. And then the next thing is now differentiating now between like desktop and mobile applications. So the different sizes, of course, they are supposed to be different sizes. And then probably something like the inputs and the buttons. So this is like the checkboxes, the inputs, the buttons. Also, this is another input, and something, and so on and so forth. So being able to work alongside like the date picker and everything, so that the engineers can be able to see the design system as you're working on it. And then the other thing is the view, or is the whatever you called it, the user flow. So fit width. So the user flow, as you can see, this is an application used by different users, a volunteer and a mentee. They all have different user flows. So you can be able to check their flow, and then of course the mobile view, and so on. So a volunteer, mainly the mentor, a mentee, this is their flow. Flow one is like, okay, when you're signing up and you want to, when you're signing up, you do not know whether you're a volunteer, a mentee, or an administrator. So this is like the first user page. So that's how you work when you're working alongside engineers. So ensuring your Figma is well documented, ensuring you can be able to share with them as you're doing the design. And then the last thing is the different applications. Like I mentioned, there's something called Zeppelin. Let me bring up tab here. So there's Zeppelin. Let me just show you how it looks like. So Zeppelin allows you to hand off everything better than you will have. So as you can see, most Android developers and front-end engineers use this for handoffs. As you can see, it gives you like an overview of everything, like from like the description, the size, and even some snippet code. The CSS, the HTML. It's the same thing as in Figma, because with Figma, you can also see, if I come to Figma and I choose this, you can also see some of the what is it called? Some of the design, like, okay, this is the width, this is the width, this is the height, this is the border radius, and so on. But with Zeppelin, it's more advanced, and it gives you like a better idea of everything. And you can use it for both Android and the web. So this is also another way to hand off designs. So you finish one page, you edit here, and so on. And also you can have the style guide here. So the other thing is portfolios. So how do you ensure recruiters can be able to see your portfolio, can be able to see what you've been working on? So there are different ways of doing a portfolio. Oh, I'll showcase two different portfolios here, and then no, I'll do three. So two are medium articles, and then the last one is no, one is on Behance, then one is a medium article, and then the last one is a medium article, and then the last one is something someone posted on their blog post. So these are portfolios from different people. I have not even asked them if I can showcase their portfolio. I'm just using them as examples. So the first place you can post your portfolio is Behance. Behance is an Adobe product, and you can use it to like showcase your work. So let me show you how my Behance looks like. Log in. So this is how I do not, I hope it does not have an extra layer of authentication. Yes. So this is how Behance looks like from my perspective. So you can see people have posted their designs and everything here. So you can go ahead and like click on one of the designs and it will show you what they've been working on. So this is my portfolio. As I said, for me, you can just find me everyone using Bethany Jep Chumbo, Bethany Jep. And these are like some of the projects I've done. I've not like written a well advanced portfolio like this one on Behance. Most of the time I just post like the digital, how it looks like the final product. I do not show like behind the scenes and everything. But it now depends, okay, who are you trying to impress? Because me, I just showing people that I can actually I can actually design something, a finished product, because I wasn't building for the sake of going somewhere to work. But then if you want people to actually hire you as a UX designer, as a UI designer, one of the best ways is showing your whole process. So I'll go through this portfolio, I'll go through this and the last one, and then I think we'll call it a night. If you have any question, as I've said, just feel free to post on the chat. I can be able to see it. So this is an application by Moshere Valeria, and she's doing a booth house application. So let's see. This is the final product of what she's working on. Yeah, probably you're now intrigued. Okay, how does this work? So the first thing when you doing your portfolio, the two people who raised their hands, Kisiangani, go ahead. Okay, Joseph.
Hi, Beth. Just one question.
Yeah.
Yeah, so whenever you're exporting your design to Zeppelin, you remember that, let's say you are doing a mobile design, maybe you decided to use a specific screen size, maybe for maybe a Samsung mobile. So do Zeppelin kind of allow you to kind of like adjust the design into various screens for the
So
developer's sake?
yeah, it does. So as you can see, for example, I already have this Zeppelin plugin here, and once I click it, I have no idea what. Oh yeah, here it is. So I already have an account. I do not remember my password. Unfortunately, do not. So if it does not work today, it might work in future. Let's see if it works. Huh. Connect Figma. Okay. Cool. So once let me go ahead and do Zeppelin here. Mm. So it will take a while to export, but one of the things I tell people is when you're working on, especially Android, when you're working on different screen sizes, just make sure you're able to do like the designs for the different screen sizes instead of waiting for something like Zeppelin to work on your behalf. Okay. Oh, it's exported everything. It's been so long since I used this, so let's click the screen. What is it telling me? So it's giving me this is typeface. Oh, interesting. It's PT Sans regular plus PT Sans bold. So welcome is in bold, Bethany is in regular, and then it now gives you like the code for it. I don't think it matters the screen size because it's giving me the exact frame and everything. With height, I'm not sure. Let me not lie. I'm not sure if I can be able to change the screen size, but as you've seen, it gives you now. Developers can just come in and get their own code for everything. I am not sure about the screen size, if I can be able to change. Let me go back and check. And then the best thing about Zeppelin is the integrations. You can connect to Slack and also to Jira. So you can say, I solved this issue and so on. But I do not think I can be able to resize. No, I cannot be able to resize the screen image. But yeah, this is an overview of how Zeppelin works. I'll do more research for you, Joseph, and then I'll tell you more about it. But yeah, okay. So let's go back to Joseph, or was that? I don't know. If you have any question, just feel free to raise your hand or unmute. Okay, so this is a portfolio as it's on Booz House. So the first thing when you're presenting your portfolio is presenting the finished product. So giving people a glimpse of what exactly the final product was. And then now going back and showing them how you worked to reach there. So the first thing is the problem statement. We talked about this a few weeks ago. So the problem statement gives you an idea of what was the background story of this application. Why should we even care about this application? So this is something young professionals need, probably because they want alcohol delivered to them very fast and very efficiently, because they want hangouts in their homes. This is probably due to the pandemic. So that's when the solution came to be. Okay. And then the next thing is, as a designer, defining what your roles were. So first, probably underlining. So for this, since it's like a personal portfolio project, this was her who's done everything. But when you come here to this is a very high level project by different team members. So you can see it has different collaborators with different roles, but then she's the only one who did everything here. And then from there, project timelines. So what times did you use to work on the project? How did you go ahead? How did you do everything in your project? And the next step is now the design process. So she's using design thinking a bit. Yeah, I am hoping. So no, this is not design thinking. It's I think a mash of design and user-centered design thinking and user-centered design. So this is the process she took, and then going back to giving you now like the background of everything and in dive of now the research. So this is provided mainly by now the research. So hypothesis is, okay, this is the assumption we have. This is why we have that assumption. And then she went ahead and did the research, figured, okay, what are the findings of the research? And these are the findings. And the other thing she did was competitive analysis, comparing the different competitors to see if this is an app worthy to purchase, to go ahead with. Still on the research, insights. So after doing the research, you come down and gain the insights. So what were your findings from the research you did? This is still part of the insights. So this is what a shopper says. Alcohol, this is probably what a young professional will say. Alcohol shopping is frustrating because I spend a lot of time trying to select what I want to buy and so on. And then the buyer is probably thinking, okay, how much money have I? How much, unless you have a calculator on your phone, most of the time when you're shopping, you might not really know the total amount until you reach the cashier. But probably with this app, you can be able to do so. And then what do? Probably they spend a lot of time going outdoors and probably pick less alcohol than they need. Then from there, creating the user personas. So these are the users for this application. I believe everyone has been able to go through the user personas. I do not know like if you did the research part of this, but all this is about research and then finding insights. From insights, now you start now coming together, bringing up your application, figuring out, okay, this is the architecture, this is how the application will look like, this is how the user will move from one screen to the next. And then this is a bit on the design system, but since it doesn't have everything, it's just a style guide that's showing you like these are the colors they use, this is the typography, this are the UI patterns, this is the icons, iconography, and then she gets into now like the design, the low fidelity and high fidelity designs. So sketches and then high fidelity. And yeah, that's it about her design. So I'll probably paste this in the chat so that you can also go ahead and look at it. And then the next design is a case study. This is specifically a UX case study. So the case study, and as I mentioned, the first thing you do is to catch the user's attention. So the first thing is presenting it in such a way that they can see the finished product and they actually have an idea of what exactly the application is. And then once you're done giving them, so this specifically is a UX case study. So it focuses more on now like the research, what they did and so on. So probably they started with the background, went dug deep into like why is this important, and then the research goal, why do they want to go ahead and do this goal, then the user research. So they went to the users and asked questions. So how do you record your subscription? How have you, if you have Netflix, how do you know how much is going to Netflix? If you have Spotify, do you pay monthly? How do you know whether you pay monthly or annually and so on? So research on that. So this is like some of the findings she got, like 65% of the individuals were male, the rest were female, and so on. So, and then this is probably the quantitative research. Then this is more the qualitative research. So this is probably some of the things the users are saying. Then from there, of course, the competitor analysis. So how do you compare with the other applications? So this is an in-depth doing the pros and cons, because this is the name of the application, pros and cons, and so on. And then from there, diving into now the user persona. So giving now a face to your application. You do your research, gain some insights, and then start creating your user. Start figuring out, okay, this is probably how the user looks like, this is how they're going, and so on. And then once you've done with now picturing how your user looks like, it's going into now the solutions. So probably you don't go to the solutions directly. You probably need to go ahead and do some architectures, figure out how the design will look like, how the application will look like, and probably add a user journey, and then go into now like, okay, this is the final solution, and something of that sort. But this is like a brainstorming period, whereby probably this is some of the things after the interview, this is like some of the collections of things like drawing patterns, doing something like what this one did here, which is around affinity mapping and associating the insights and so on. And then from there, after now finding the insights, drawing the architecture, going into the low fidelity and then high fidelity design. Then one of the things I normally advise people when they're doing their portfolios is at the end, of course, the style guide is at the end, you do a reflection section. So come back and think about, okay, this is what I learned. This is something that I gained from this. This is probably something I gained out, because almost all of the recruiters will want to know, okay, you did all this. What did you gain from that? Why should I care about the research you did? What skills did you gain afterwards? So yeah. And then the last portfolio is a more senior designer. So don't worry if your portfolio does not look this packed in the first round. Don't worry, it will. You just go. It goes with time. So it means the more you do this, the better you become. So this is a more advanced designer for a company, an existing company. So for the first two, it was just a case study of like the research and the designs. But then this is someone who's already done the research, done everything, and it's already implemented in the market. So as again, as I said, when you're doing the first part of your portfolio, you just have to bring the person who's reading it in. If it's a recruiter, make them curious, make them interested. So share with them why exactly, what the application is all about, and then a snippet of now the different applications. And then, so since this is an already existing company, the person gave a brief on like, okay, this is what the company is about, their mission, and so on. And then giving now an idea of, okay, this is what I did here. This was my role. And then the finished product. And then let's go dive into now the UX. The UX deals with now the problem, research again, personas, giving a face to your research. And then after research, gaining insights. After gaining insights, you now go ahead and now do the low fidelity. Oh, this is, I've skipped part of it. This is the user workflow that they imagined. And again, when you're doing some of these designs, you might be working with an NDA. You might have signed an NDA and they've told you, okay, you're not supposed to showcase what exactly you came up with. And you can see one of the things done here is they blurred the user journeys, so you cannot tell what exactly is going on here. Then from there, low fidelity and improving and coming up. And then afterwards, after now building the design, he went ahead and did something called usability testing. So how do you check if this product is actually meaningful? So going ahead, testing with actual users, seeing if it's actually useful. And then now, this is now the final high fidelity with an explanation of each part. So this is, for example, this are single view transactions. This is how someone makes transactions. This is like the real-time responses, responding from home, the user flow in response, and so on. And then the last part, as I mentioned, is what did you gain from the design? What did you live with after you finished your design? And then, so this is an overview of now what they gained and so on. And then next. So another thing, last thing I'll say about portfolios is people want to see more of your work. As you've seen, I've perused through most of these designs. I've technically not even read, like, I don't think anyone has any idea like what Quora is, other than the first part that it's a shared digital banking platform with a cooperative spirit. So people are here to learn more about what exactly you're doing, what the final product is, rather than reading most of the text. So you should find a balance between, okay, where am I supposed to make the designs, and where am I supposed to speak with the design, and where am I just supposed to write some text. So this portfolio, this case study, should I say a case study or portfolio, has a very interesting balance between the text and the images. Like, it's very balanced. But then there's no part that you'll feel like, okay, you should have written this, you should have done this in form of design rather than text, because everything is designed. But then when you're looking at something like this part of the user story, you feel like, okay, I think the pros and cons should be in form of a diagram, like what she did here, something of this sort. So you should always find a balance between the number of words you're doing and the visuals that you're showing. And in most cases, have more visuals than the text. Yeah, I think that's it from me. So unless anyone has any question, oh, I'm sorry, we're 2 minutes over time. So if you have any question, you can raise your hand. Otherwise, I'll hand it over to Luke. So any question, any question? Anyone with any question? Maggie?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
So I have a question about design systems and style guide.
Yeah.
So first of all, what's the difference? And second of all, I'm currently working on design, and I've experienced that the style guide I made as I'm designing, I'm finding that there's some things that are either not in the style guide or that I thought would work and are not working. So is that how it's supposed to be? Like you edit it as you design, or should it
Yes.
be something final?
Okay, so first, the difference, there are three things actually. There's something called a style guide, there's something called, let me go back to sharing my screen. Something called a style guide, there's something called a UI library, and then the last one is, I'm not sure I shared everything. Another second, share. Okay. Okay, let's use this site. So there are three things. There's a style guide, there's a design system, and then there's the UI library. So I'll just talk of the two, style guide and the design system. A style guide is just something that gives you like the gives you like the guidance of the styles being used. So for example, if I go to Facebook Meta, let me go to Meta. It just gives you like a brand overview, like this is how you should use the logo and so on. It doesn't give you like details about, so it mainly focuses on things like the branding, the editorial guidelines, the mission statement, and so on. But then, oh yeah, let me just speak of all of them. The other one is a pattern library. A pattern library will now give you an overview of like the styles only. So let me show you an example. So you see this one is mainly of a style guide / pattern library. It just gives you like an idea of a small idea of like what exactly is entailed. For example, you can see, for example, the colors. I've written something like the use cases of these colors. In illustration of graphs, you use these colors. Like it's for backgrounds, for feedback, this is the colors you use. But then a design system is more robust. It has more factors around it. So let me look for one. I think Shopify design system. And this is how the Shopify design system looks like. It's called Polaris, and it has everything. It has like a guide on the values, the page layout, how do you design apps for Spotify, the different components. So like this, so it has like all these components here that you can see, the different design guidelines, the different patterns, and so on. And then it's, as you can see, this is like version 9. 0.0, so it's like regularly updated. It's not something that's static, something that should be regularly updated. Same to, so the reason why I insist on, when you're doing a design, you start with, when you're starting, you also start the design library, is because you'll realize it's very easy for you to change things. So one of the things I do is, let me just give you an example. I normally have all my designs, once I create something, especially with text, effect styles, and colors, I normally add them directly to Figma. And for example, I've already added, like, my main color is that shade of blue. So if I change, let's say I change it to a brighter shade of blue. Wait, let me not change fast. Let me just change. I'll do Control Z. So if I change to that shade of blue and I come back to my design, my laptop has hanged. Oh yeah, and I come back to my design, you can see everything else has changed to the lighter shade of blue. You see, like, once you've identified this is the color I'm using as my main color, you've added it to the style guide. If it changes, if you like update the color back, everything else, if I do Control Z, it's not working. See, the color is back, is reset back to like the original color. That means you don't have to, like, when you make changes, you don't have to go back to like the different, I don't know how many screens you saw there that had the colors changed, but you can imagine going one by one to each of those screens, changing the main color, because you didn't write down initially that, this is the style guide, you see? So yeah, for when you're designing, it's bound to change. You'll probably change a lot of things. I think the first font I used in this design was Segoe, and then I moved to PT Sans, and then I moved to, I'm not sure why I can't see the text. Selection colors. Let me select a line of text here that I can be able to see. You see, it's like I've already specified, this is for header 1, desktop, this is header 1, header 2, desktop, header 3, body, and then so on and so forth. So these are like all the desktop styles, these are the mobile styles. And then I don't know where the styles coming from, but yeah. So so for me to change this, if I want to change from now PT Sans to something else, it's very easy for me to change. We want to change it to Inter, if I want to change it to so on. It's very easy to change. Yeah. I think that's it. That's what I wanted to say. Yeah. Anyone else with any question? Oh, let me share. Let me share an article on the difference between style guide and pattern library. And then the main difference between a design system, it has everything. It's like both style guide and pattern library together, plus more guidelines. There's someone who had their hand up. I don't know. Do you still have a question before we call it a night? Okay, I think I'll hand it over back to you, Luke.
Yep. Thank you, Bethany. Yeah, it has been a really insightful session, and I'm sure we have all learned. Yeah, so thank you. So I'd just like to remind us once again about the form that was reopened to submit our low fidelity design. So make sure if you didn't complete the assignment, make sure you submit it by 2 a.m. today. So you have less than 5 hours. So make sure you do so that you may proceed to the next phase. Yes, so thank you very much for joining in. And I think we can end at that. Yeah, so you can leave at your own pleasure. Yes, thank you and goodbye. Make sure you have tweeted. Yeah, I've shared the the people who you can tag at the chat. So make sure you have tweeted what you have been learning. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Yeah, good night.